parents knew what I knew, they would do things differently. You have the right to feel safe at all times.
We acknowledge the traditional custodians of the land on which we gather today, the Noongar Wadandi Mort. We pay our respects to their elders, past, present and emerging.
Scratch the surface and everyone has a story. Welcome, Kaya, to the Wisdom of Women.
Our guest today is passionate about keeping our kids safe after a career that saw her frontline investigating child abuse cases.
What Kristi McVee saw and heard made her realise that parents don't have enough education and knowledge to protect their kids.
Kristi, welcome. It must have been pretty tough knowing the extent of child abuse scenarios and just how far widespread it is out in the community.
Yeah.
Reflecting back on all this, how does it all sit with you?
Well, it sits with me not very well, because even though I know what I know, everyone else doesn't know what I know. So, I've spent 10 years in the police. I was a specialist child interviewer, so I sat with children across a table like this, asking them questions about the worst days and the worst incidences of their short lives and hearing their stories. And when I spoke to the parents and the grandparents and the carers of these children, I just kept realising that people don't talk about this stuff enough, and we're not sharing this information, or we're not sharing these stories because it's been such a taboo and shameful subject, and we need to really shine a light on it. Otherwise, it's never going to get any better. And so that's what I'm wanting to do. I want to shine a light on this subject because thankfully I'm not a victim or survivor of child sexual abuse. So I can speak out for those kids and those people who can't. And that's what I'm doing now.
Let's talk about, way back before you came in. How did you get into this?
How did I get into this?
Yeah.
Well, that's an interesting story. So when my daughter was 9 months old, I saw an ad in the paper for the West Australian Police saying, "We want women." Went along something along those lines, and we want women, and there's flexible working arrangements, blah blah blah. And my daughter was only 9 months old, and I was like, "Oh, I can do that." Yeah. Now I'm 5'1". I'm not a tall woman, and I worked in administration. I didn't finish high school. I was kicked out of home at 15. So I don't know where the gumption or the drive was to become a police officer, but I think it came from becoming a mother. And so my daughter was 9 months old. I said to my husband, who is my high school sweetheart, I said, I'm going to... Yes and no. I said, yeah, I'm going to do this. And he said, oh, okay. He's always let me just go off on any tangent or anywhere.
Can I just say, having a child 9 months old,
yep.
Like most mothers are pretty, knee-deep in nappies, lost sleep,
yep.
crying, whatever it
yep.
might be.
Yeah.
Like, that sounds pretty intense to me.
I don't know where that drive came from, and even looking back, I'm like, I have no idea. But I'm pretty sure it set me on a path that I never really envisioned. I didn't envision that. And so then it took me nearly 18 months to get fit enough to actually get on that pathway and then apply. And then I got in during the global financial crisis. My first day as a police officer was the 25th of January 2010. My daughter hadn't even turned 2 yet. And so, so that started my journey. And then after the academy, 6 months in the academy where my husband worked away, I was with my 2-year-old at that stage. He was away for 6 months, and I got a transfer to Karratha where he was working. So I went straight to regional WA. Working out of Karratha, and I was there for 4 years. And in that time, whilst I was working in Karratha, they asked for volunteers to go and become specialist child interviewers. And I was looking for a way to do more, because I realised when I went into the police, I just love helping people. And I thought that the police was the way I could give back. Yeah. I've always had that drive to help. Just a side note, one of my friends said to me, you were always going to be a police officer. And I was like, no, how did you? No way. I never thought it. And she goes, Kristi, you used to fly across that quadrangle if there was bullies bullying someone and basically stick up for the underdog every time.
You're policing at school. There's a time. You're already there.
Yep. And my brother said the same thing. He's like, remember when you told that teacher off for bullying me at school? And I was in the playground, looking up at this teacher. I was like, no, don't tell my brother off. Anyway, so that's how, they saw it. I didn't. Yeah. So I put my hand up to become a specialist child interviewer. And
So Karratha must have been an interesting environment to be in.
Yes.
That's a few years ago.
2010 to 2014.
Yeah, okay. So, northern parts of WA have, all the issues that remote regions do have.
Small communities, a lack of facilities, lack of education, some very broad ranges of socioeconomic issues. But I also grew up in Port Hedland, so it actually felt like going home because it was back in the red dirt and the spinifex.
And you get to know the people.
Yeah, you do. And you do get to know the people, and you get to know as a police officer especially, you get to know the same people. So I put my hand up to become a specialist child interviewer and went on that training, which was for 4 weeks. And so I had to leave my daughter at home with my husband and went down to Perth because it's obviously 1,600 kilometres, and got that training. And from day one, I just had my blinkers blown away. And I even, I'm not a survivor of childhood sexual abuse, but I thought I was a wise and quite, world wisely person, but I had no idea. Street savvy, but I had no idea what we were dealing with. And I remember, ringing my husband in a panic going, oh my God, how are we going to keep our kids safe? And
so it's that confronting. It's almost like all the protection that you thought.
Yeah, I thought I was making, and I was making safe. I was a protective parent, right? Yeah. But I just didn't realise how bad it was. And having a 3-year-old at that stage, it was so confronting because young children are the most vulnerable children. They can't speak up. They can't do anything for themselves. They can't help themselves. They can't get help usually. So the idea of my 3-year-old baby girl at the time being abused by someone who would be close to them, because over 90% of all child abuse is done by someone known to them. It was child sexual abuse.
That's a frightening statistic, isn't it?
Yeah. And then, the other statistic is that 1 in 3 girls and 1 in 6 boys will be a victim of child sexual abuse by the time they reach 18.
1 in 3 and 1 in 6 boys. Yeah, and we always think it's the girls.
I know. So those statistics slap you in the face, but the reality is once you start talking to children and hearing their stories and hearing what happens to them, just breaks your heart. And so I just from that moment forward changed everything I did about protective parenting and parenting my own daughter, but obviously, didn't realise the what I was doing in the background was creating this encyclopedia of knowledge, so to speak, for myself, but for other people. And I went on to do that for nearly 9 years as a specialist child interviewer. I actually interviewed in Bunbury as well when I was here. But what led me from there is that as a junior constable and a police officer, I just was, doing these things like interviewing these children and getting their evidence, and then, and then I was like, I really want to be in that seat interviewing that. We call them crooks, right? Yeah. I wanted to be interviewing the crook. I didn't want to be handing it over to the detective's office saying, hey, here's your... I was always determined to be a detective, I think. Yeah.
You felt like you wanted to continue that process.
Yeah.
You'd started the journey with the child or children.
Yeah.
And to continue. Yeah. To be their protector.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, and I mean, look, I did other jobs in between. Like I spent time doing, youth justice type stuff or prolific offending, where children and young people or even adults were, doing burglaries, stealing cars, stealing, that sort of thing. And I was involved in that. But even that has some level of child abuse attached to it or some level of trauma attached to it. Yeah. People aren't inherently evil, no. And, what I'm learning now is that so much of what people's stories are contribute to how they react and act and how they behave, and that's why we see so much, of of people, acting out as they get older, or children acting out.
As you say, it can usually be traced back to some sense of trauma, an event,
Yep.
that has happened within their
And
lives.
learnt behaviour.
Yep. Or and
Intergenerational conditions.
Yeah, there's so many parts to it, and I have no answers to any of them. But I just know that if we could just slow down and change those statistics and just move that needle a little bit from, that 1 in 3 and 1 in 6, if we could move that needle, we would have such a different, we don't have the structures and the help in place for people now.
Yeah.
If we can move that needle so that there is no adverse effects, they're not being affected by child abuse or child sexual abuse, then maybe we'll have less trauma and less, burden on society for those people, or they won't be burdened by that pain, and maybe can be better, more contributing people to society.
How different is it all, do you think, from when you first started going into this area as opposed to what you saw emerging after 10 plus years? Because I imagine you've got technology and then the crooks are finding new ways, cleverer ways.
Yeah, very much so.
Yeah, how does that all play out with you?
Well, when I first started talking to kids, if a child presented with, say, harmful sexualised behaviours, which is when a child is either hurting themselves sexually or hurting someone else sexually, or they're being, showing ways that they might be showing sexual behaviours, basically. It could be not, flashing themselves, or masturbating in public, or masturbating around other children, or touching another child. That's what is considered harmful sexualised behaviours. And when I first started in the job, we always thought that if a child showed those sorts of behaviours, it was because they had been a victim of some form of abuse. And that was our go-to. We would look at the family, we would look at the history, we would interview the kids. But now what we're seeing, or towards the end of my career and more so now, is that children who are displaying harmful sexualised behaviours are probably have been either groomed online or have been had access to pornography. Because most children have, the average age of a child seeing porn for the first time now is 8 years old.
See, that's just absurd.
I would, yes.
I'm horrified.
Yeah. So when a child's seeing pornography, which is not made for children's eyes, it's not made for a child audience, they don't understand it, but they know that they've seen it, and it can be quite insidious. It sits in the back of their mind. We have children who are unable to sleep once they've seen it. They keep replaying that over and over in their mind.
They simply don't have the ability
to understand
contextualise or anything with pornography.
No, and then then you might have a child that will try that on another child because they've seen something. And the thing is that all of these things, even if it happens, can be actually mitigated and the risk reduced if we are talking about it with our children. Okay. But because parents and we're not talking about it, we're leaving our children open. And
parents are not aware how easily accessible this kind of video is.
Well, they're embedded in children. They're embedded in simple videos on YouTube Kids and YouTube, in children's videos, and they're embedded in, just a click up, a pop up on a game that children might be
So when you talk about embedded, they'll be like the flash that will come up,
or they would like that a part of it will look like Peppa Pig, and then they'll have like a part of porn in there, and so kids think they're watching Peppa Pig, or parents think, oh yeah, they're in front of the TV, they're watching, or in front of their device watching Peppa Pig, and they don't know that there's like a porn video embedded inside, into the video. So and these. I don't understand the minds behind the people who do this, but they're there and they're doing it. So, and I don't get bogged down with the why people do harm kids and why they do this. I get bogged down with, well, how are we going to stop it? How are we going to protect our kids? How are we going to reduce the harm to children? So that's pretty much changed a lot.
Our authorities, are we getting cleverer as well with how we can grab these people?
Yeah, but also, with the technology changes, like you asked, since the start, when I started, Facebook was in its infancy. We didn't have Snapchat, and we didn't have Instagram, and we didn't have all of these other private messaging apps. And so what's happened since I joined and since I've left is that the technology's gotten easier for predators to prey on children.
Yeah.
And they have they're smarter than us. They've got more, like, what I mean is that smarter than us, meaning parents, not police. Police are there behind the scenes working to try and keep up. But their sole purpose is to abuse children. They're not there to, they don't give a shit about our kids.
No.
And when we hand a device or a phone to our children, we're basically giving the predators a key to their bedroom.
Wow.
And
All right.
yeah.
So what are the things that you're saying to parents? What are the things that parents need to understand and know, the basics of what need to be done? Because most children have a phone by,
Yeah.
6
or 7.
Yeah.
It's 8.
Yeah.
I mean, all children. I mean, don't get me wrong. I like to remind parents that I made all the mistakes. When my daughter's 15 now, I definitely made mistakes in my journey. I gave her a device at 3. I didn't spend a lot of time supervising or monitoring her device, or I thought I'd had it locked down until she came to me at 10 and said, "Oh, Mum, I've seen something I didn't like, and it was porn."
Yeah.
And we've had that conversation. Luckily, before that at 8, we'd had a conversation around sex because someone was talking about it at school.
Right.
So, she felt safe to come to me and tell me these things.
That's good.
Yeah.
All right. So again, what you're talking about, getting back to open communication.
Yep.
Start talking with your children
As early as possible.
in an appropriate way, depending on their
Yep.
age,
Yep.
about that, so
Perfectly.
that they feel comfortable to come to you if, as you say, something pops up.
Yeah.
On.
Yeah, so since leaving the police, I did some about 3 years or just under of talking to kids and presenting to students at schools about cyber safety and online safety. And one of the things, kids would come to me after the presentation, because there I am talking nicely to them, saying, you're not, it's okay if you've made mistakes. It's okay if you didn't know and then something's happened. And they would come and disclose to me that, they'd been groomed, or because no one had told them what grooming was, or what these predators you do to lure these kids in. So they would come to me and disclose, and I would say, it's okay, it's all right, you're okay. Like, have you told anyone? Have you told your parents? And, kids love to share their stories, right? And they would, I'd have lines of them trying to tell me stories, not just about grooming, but, about their, maybe
Their
cyberbullying
experience.
or their experiences, right?
Yep.
But you'd get a kid who'd come up and say, yeah, I've been groomed and I shared a nude with someone that I shouldn't have, and, whatever. And then, I'd say, have you spoken to your parents? No. Why haven't you spoken with your parents? Because I'm scared. And they will take my device off me, and they will punish me. So the thing is that what I want parents to know is that we can't, and this is a beautiful way to put it, is we can't fear someone into feeling safe. We can't make them feel safe if we're going to make them feel scared.
Yes, that's really...
So if we're going to yell and growl at our kids and tell them off and punish them for making mistakes, because, the only difference between our generation and their generation is that we didn't have phones showing what we were doing. We didn't have phones recording everything. I mean, God, thank God for that.
Can you imagine? We went off to parties, though, had a great time. And
dangerous
that was
situations
Got
that we
forgotten.
could have gotten in trouble for, and but we didn't have anything recording that, and we didn't have anything where we only had to deal with the local our local community or
the more immediate sort of effects, as opposed, as you say, to something
world.
being photo or vision being available
worldwide. To billions of people. But so I think the difference now is that we need to get off our high horse about, you shouldn't do this and you shouldn't do that, and we need to remember that unless you've done the work to make sure your child doesn't know what to do, then it's actually your fault. It's your fault your child's taking those risks. It's your fault because you haven't prepared them and reduced the risk to them, reduce the harm to them.
Okay. So provide a safe pathway for your child to discuss very openly the issues that are coming up, that may come up, without feeling like, as you say, they're going to be punished and mum or dad are going to take their phone off them, or their iPad or whatever it might be.
And how I did that with my own daughter was, and these are techniques I learned as a specialist child interviewer. I used to talk to her about stuff and say let's think about what age she was, maybe 9 or 10, and I would say, hey, you know, if any of your friends ever been asked for a nude photo online, you know, while they're gaming, has anyone, because when I don't talk about her personally and I bring her friends into it, it's no like shit. Kids love talking about their friends because if their friends can get in trouble, but they're not, you know. So I used to say, hey, has any of your friends been asked for a foot pic? Because at one stage,
foot pic.
Yeah, so at one stage, predators were using the request for feet pictures as a way to get kids to share nudes. It was about 5 years ago.
Wow, I was just going to ask you, what are some of the most insidious or, you know, terrible ways that you've seen them trying to get a look in?
Right now is pretty bad for young men, teenage boys, because we're seeing it's massive, like a 300% increase in online sextortion for young teenage boys and men from age 12 to 24, where they are being approached by online by someone of their age bracket, young woman or young girl, who, you know, says, hey, you know, like how you look, you know, and then we'll share a nude,
right,
or share a video of themselves, and then immediately ask for one back. And unfortunately, our young men are the target because they are in a rush to be wanted. They're looking for connections. They're looking for a way to feel wanted. That somewhere in there, our young men are feeling very disconnected from themselves and from their peers and from and quite often, we don't talk to men about this stuff. We don't talk to our young boys. We think they're going to be okay.
No, we always preface to females, I suppose, in that way, don't we?
So the young men are being targeted by these actual organised crime gangs over in organised crime gangs, and they're basically mass approaching young men. And then once the young man, so it's a quid pro quo sort of thing. I've sent you photos, send me some photos back, handsome. And then they send off their dick pic or whatever, and then immediately afterwards they're extorted for money. So if you don't pay me $400, or if you don't pay me this, if you don't pay me that.
Wow.
And I was recently at a conference with Task Force Argos, who is the leaders in Australia about you know, online child exploitation. And from the moment a young man was contacted, he was only 16, to the moment he took his own life was 4 hours.
Oh, Kristi.
And yeah, so might want to add some trigger warnings at the start.
Yeah, no, absolutely. And look, these are conversations, as you say, though, that need to be had, because the lack of communication and understanding.
And our children are losing their lives.
Yeah.
Our children are losing their lives. I mean, the young men are way more vocal about talking to reporting than women. It's really interesting. We're seeing the increase in online sextortion of young men. And I had a young man, 21-year-old man, who's a tradie. He's got an apprenticeship, and he was extorted. And I said to him, mate, what was the reason for that? Why did you feel that you needed to share a photo and a video with this person? And he said, I was lonely. You know, so our young people are lonely. Like, we might be connected, but they're not connected. And my daughter says it pretty bluntly all the time. She said, Mum, our generation's screwed, because we might be able to talk to each other online, but we don't know how to talk to each other in person, and we don't know how to connect. And she's 15 years old, and that's how she feels, because she can ask people to catch up, and they'll make plans, and then they cancel them straight away, or like just before it happens. And you know, we regularly see mental health professionals as a family, all of us, because, you know, I've left the police with PTSD, but I left the police with PTSD, so I'm very aware about mental health and what we need to do to maintain it. And she said her counsellor, psychologist, said to her, unfortunately, you know, have you considered that your peers are maybe just anxious and they don't know how to actually be together anymore, you know, in that environment.
I think we've talked about this, haven't we? Said there's this generation has a lot of anxiety, like even answering phones or making a phone call, or stepping out of the house. And it's not, it's across all the ages, and it's like under 25. Down.
I mean, look, I've seen a huge change, because my daughter was struggling with her mental health last year, so I took her out of school and she was homeschooled. It's just lucky that I could. If I was still in the police, could never have done that. So she's stepped away from school for this year, and next year we'll go back to year 11 and 12. But the difference in her, because she's then gone and got jobs and she's now interacting with people and stuff, you know, older people as well. I think young people, and I mean Sid might be able to help here, they are the most judgmental of each other than anyone else. Do you agree?
I'm scared of people my age.
Yeah, it's easier to talk with people who aren't your own age when you're a teenager.
Yeah,
it's easier to talk with older and younger, because the people in your own year group are so judgmental. And I think that's something.
Has it always been that way?
It has, but I think it's gotten worse because of social media. Yeah. Because everything we do is magnified. We are, everything we have and do online is magnified. So they can easily pick on you. And our kids are anxious. My daughter's a beautiful musician, so scared to share her talent. And she probably will never.
Oh, because she'll be torn down.
She has been torn down. She's she was a beautiful singer. She doesn't sing anymore. So, it's really sad. And I mean, that's her journey, but.
Yeah. The kids are all on their journeys. And as you say, though, to have that environment where they can feel safe, where they can start talking a little bit more and connecting is all helpful on the journey to, claiming themselves back.
Yeah. And I think giving your kids that safe space at home. I used to say to my daughter all the time, when we were kids, we didn't have phones that could connect us with everyone 24/7, right? So you might be bullied at school, but when you went home, you had your, hopefully, if you had a safe home, you had your safe space at home and you could just forget about the day, right? Yes. Now they've got it 24/7. So, definitely getting back to device control, like devices and things parents can do, set up some boundaries around how much they can use it and restrict it, even in teenage years. If you set it up as young people, they will be happy to continue it as teenagers, because it's so easy to get. We are all addicted to our devices, whether we like it or not. We are. So, that they're them even more so, because they've got, they haven't got their prefrontal cortex isn't fully developed. It's, they're a lot of the time running from their primitive brain in the back, so we need to make sure our kids have some boundaries and rules and just guidance where they have time away from their phones. I still, to this day, much to my daughter's disgust, make her put her phone in the lounge room every night to be charged. They need time away from it. Yeah. Don't have it in their rooms.
That's a good one, isn't it?
I do that too. The last couple of days I've let my son have it just for something, but most of the time it's when he goes to bed, he puts it by my bed for charging.
Oh, really?
But really,
you shouldn't have it in your bedroom.
No, but only because I can't trust him. Let's be honest.
Put it in your bathroom or something.
Yeah, I just don't. Yeah, he'll be on it, chatting and stuff like that. And it's really interesting because I went to pick up his friend, and we pull in, and I'm like, "Go on, Danny, out you get." And he's like, "Oh, he's coming." It's like, "Oh, yeah, I forgot you've got phones." I said, "No, get out of the car, knock on the door, say hello to his mum and dad." And then he's like,
"Okay." That's really old school. That's old school.
But how interesting is that? Just that small little connection is, again, just completely lost because of our mobile devices.
Yeah. Well, even to the point where, when your parents used to send you, and you might not remember this, Sid, but when your parents used to send you to the shop, or you'd have to go and buy something for them. Like, I remember my daughter a few years ago, and I mean, her anxiety was pretty bad at the time, and it wasn't long after COVID. I was like, "Can you go?" I was standing over here, and she was I said, "Can you go over to Baker's Delight and buy this?" And she had a full-blown meltdown. "I don't want to talk to anyone. I don't want to talk to anyone." Now, complete change of personality. She's matured. She's, gotten those skills. But if we don't help them, and this is a whole different story, but if we don't help them get those tools under their belt by the time they hit 18, they're behind the 8 ball.
Yeah, so
that's
true.
why first jobs are so important. That's why getting out of their comfort zone is so important.
Yeah.
And I think having a device, and as parents, we know how much trauma we went through with our parents. I don't know about you guys, but mine left me pretty traumatized. That we were like trying to mitigate that, trying to stop that trauma, but we might have gone a bit too far.
Yeah. It's interesting, isn't it, the parameters and how some parents operate. Yeah. And I know what I got as a mum as well. Oh, but everyone else can do it. And so you're constantly trying to get the barricades, but if everyone else is doing it, it's a battle.
I know, and do you know what my answer to that was? I don't give a shit what anyone else is doing.
Yeah. Hey, there you go. That's it.
Because we're the parents.
Yeah.
Full stop, the end. One of the complaints I used to have, was, everyone else is doing it. You don't let me do anything. I said, the necessities of life is all I have to provide. And I used to throw the criminal code at her, and she'd be like, I hate it. I just have to provide shelter, food, water, schooling, education, and one on the top is love. And if you get all that, you don't need anything else. And she's like, I hate you when you say that. And yeah, so I used to say that. I only have to provide the necessities of life, and you've got it. Yeah. So there you go.
Yeah.
I got asked the question today, are parents, parents are accused of being helicopter parents. Mm. I think there's a fine line between being a helicopter parent and being a protective parent. Yeah. Helicopter parents are the ones who don't allow children to try things, who don't allow them to risk, take those little risks, or do things that will expand their abilities and their knowledge and stuff like that. Don't be that parent, because those kids are absolute horrendous adults. Be the parent that allows their children to still take risks, but within reason, with safety precautions in place in case. And I always say to people, like I had a moment last year where, or maybe it was when she was 13, where my daughter wanted to go to the beach with her friends. And I was a bit worried. Being that I've worked in this area, and I was like, there's some people out there that are, taking photos and videos of young girls. And also there was one guy that was flashing at one stage. And I was like a bit worried. So what I did was, just like when I was in the police and I did scenario training where we practiced things, I just said, what would you do if? What would you do if an adult came up to you and he made you feel uncomfortable? What would you do now? And I just practiced things with her, or just talk those things with her, so that if that situation, God forbid, hope it never happens, but if that situation ever happened to her, she knew exactly what to do. Because that means that it takes away the fear, and it takes away it gives them an actual action step to take.
That's a great idea. That's a great tip.
Yeah.
Run through the what if.
Yeah. What would you do if? What would you do if? And then, and that's my favourite actual question for kids. What would you do if? Yeah. And I've been asking that question since she was 3 years old, when I was teaching her protective behaviours. What would you do if someone wanted to look at your private parts? What would you do if someone asked you to touch theirs? What would you do if someone sent you a nude? What would you do if someone asked you for a nude? What would you do if someone came and tried to take you when you were at the shops and mum wasn't nearby? What would you do? What would you do? And that was all I've ever asked her, and I think that's a great question for parents.
It almost, I think, empowers a child to an extent, because they can know that there are options and that they have a little bit of power.
Yeah, and that's how you take away the fear. Yeah. And that's how you get them to take risks without that fear. Yeah. Yeah. So that they're empowered and ready.
Mm. Yeah. I've heard that pedophiles in particular don't particularly like using the correct terms for anatomy.
Yes.
And if a child knows to say, that's my penis.
Yep. Correct.
They don't like it, and it's more of a turn off, and rather than you can touch my pee or whatever. Yeah. Is that
that's correct. Child sex offenders, in a rule, don't like confident children. So the more confident your child is in their safety rights and their body safety rights, the first thing I taught my daughter was, you have the right to feel safe at all times. That is a right that no one can take away. This is actually a right that everyone has, man, woman, child, is the right to feel safe. It doesn't matter if you're at school, it doesn't matter if you're at home, it doesn't matter if you're in trouble with your parents. You have the right to feel safe. And the second part to that is you can always talk to someone. So those are the two parts to start with, because we want children to understand that they can come to someone and tell them. But the sad fact of the matter is that only one. So for a child to, this is the average, a child has to disclose their child sexual abuse 3 times to 3 adults before someone will do something.
Wow.
And that's an average.
Oh.
So most children will go to a person and try and tell them, and they might be pushed aside or told that they've got it wrong, or don't talk like that, or whatever reason that someone hasn't believed them, or they haven't been able to complete the disclosure. But it's on average 3 people, and a lot of children will give up on the first.
God, how sad is that?
So one of the things that we promote, or people in my industry promote, is resilience. We need to remind children to keep telling someone, keep telling the next safe adult or the next person, because not everyone's a safe adult. And so keep telling the adults that, and a safe adult is someone that will listen to them and help them stop it. Help stop whatever's making them feel unsafe and feel scared or hurt.
Yeah, okay.
Yeah.
Yeah, wow. The statistics that you're talking about along here are just mind-blowing and very sad.
Very.
Yeah, I can understand why after so many years you would have walked away with post-traumatic stress. Yeah.
Yeah, it was I guess some of the reasons for that is because there's vicarious trauma when you're listening to story after story after story of children who are so vulnerable and so precious and don't deserve to have what happen to them. That is going to leave its mark, and it just builds up and adds. And I think probably the best part of all of this is that I was aware of it. I sought help, and then I said, nah, enough's enough. And it was actually my daughter, who was just about to turn 12 at the time, who said, Mum, you're not my mum anymore. Can you please leave? And I listened straight away. Yeah. Whereas some people in uniform, some people who are still in the job, don't have that courage, or they're indoctrinated to believe that they don't have the skills to leave. Right. And I knew, because I had a life before policing. I was 28 when I joined. 29, I had a life before it, and I knew that I could do anything when I left. Yeah. It was just that as I was leaving, and I found my notebook the other day, and in July 2019 I started writing notes about what to write in my book. And I was writing things, and I hadn't even thought to leave yet. I just kept thinking, I need to tell people what I know. I need parents to know what I know. So I started writing notes, and then when I left it, I wrote a book about it.
So you eventually were a detective.
Yes.
And you sat in front of these crooks.
Yes. Yeah.
How hard that must have been.
I'm a why person, so I want to know the why behind everything. And I didn't realize I was such a why person until I left the job. So I actually enjoyed getting to the bottom of some of the stories. But, I used to chase every rabbit down every hole. I couldn't help myself. I was really...
That could have been some really deep holes too, I
Yeah,
imagine.
It was very hard, because generally when you start moving dirt, or shit in their case, you find other victims. So quite often I would, investigate someone, or investigate one child's, evidence, and then I would find a multitude of victims, because, I can't even remember the statistic on that one, but most child sex offenders don't have one victim, they have multiples. And and so when you start turning it up and you start searching, you generally find some more.
So you must have had a lot of, I just assume that police would have a lot of training in keeping calm.
Yeah, it's interesting. I was really good at it, I think, towards the end. I didn't actually had a moment this morning where I was reflecting before I started this walk, came to meet you guys, and I was like, my motto in the police was fake it till you make it. That was my motto, because, and interestingly, and not something I share very often, but I felt like a fraud all through my police career. I didn't think I was good enough. I didn't think I could do it. But I was determined to fake it till I made it. And so when I had to stand in front of, lead a search warrant or lead a interview against someone, I would fake it till I made it. And so I do have a good poker face. Not so good once the camera's off.
Yeah.
I'd be losing it out the back.
Yeah, okay. That's interesting, though, you talk about that imposter syndrome, because it's a discussion that we have had, that women, a lot of women do carry. And as you say, even though they have incredible experience, knowledge and skills in a set field, they often still feel like they don't quite measure up.
No, and that was my whole career, and even now I still go, I can't believe I did that. It feels unreal. But
here you are, you've written a book.
I wrote a book, and And going back to your question, Joe, about sitting across the table from of offenders, they never tell the truth.
No.
They never, I've had 1 in 10 years admit to his abuse.
Really?
Sorry, I lie, 1.5. The half was a guy who half admitted some of it and wouldn't admit to the rest. And he made an excuse that, he was abused, and so he then went on to abuse, which is actually a lie for most.
It is?
And, most child sex offenders will say that to make themselves more human. Because it's such a disgusting offense. It's so disgusting what they do. And a lot of them lie to themselves thinking that, they tell themselves a world of lies. Children will enjoy it. It was done to them, so it can't be harmful. We had a Anglican priest say that. Oh, well, it was done to me. I didn't do them any harm. All of those sorts of things. They tell themselves so many lies to do what they want to do to children. What it comes down to is that they don't care about children. They just care about themselves. And but one of the interesting things I learnt, and it doesn't get talked about very often, is there's actually 3 different types of child sex offender. There's the pedophilic ones that are actually attracted to children. They're the ones who no love nor money can be reformed because they are attracted to children, and they call themselves, or there's a subgroup of humans call themselves minor attracted people. And so they think that, they want to be part of the LGBTQI plus community because they believe that they should be, there's nothing wrong with them. They're just attracted to minors, and they would never do them harm. These are, so that's another conversation for another day.
Wow.
But the other 2 types of child sex offenders are situational and situational are basically someone who's in a situation where they've lost control and power. It might have lost their job, might have lost their marriage, something's happened.
So they're triggered.
They don't have the coping mechanisms in place, or for whatever reason, and then they will offend against a child. So so situational, is that what I just said? Yeah, situational. Opportunistic. So opportunistic they might be attracted to children, but they're the type of offenders that target young single mums, or they target their nieces and nephews, or they target, because again, they might be attracted to children or not, but they're, they have the opportunity to, and so they will take it. So there's a lot to be done around that. But I saw those 3 when I was in the job.
It's really interesting because, like a lot of women my age, I'm a true crime junkie. And there's a lot, and I've noticed this when, say, a young teenage girl or a teenage girl goes missing and blah, 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 mum's repartnered, whatever, 99% of the time,
it's them.
It's that guy who has...
Because he was opportunistic.
Yeah. Mum was working that night, or mum was up early that day, and had gone into the room, she either fought back or something happened, and it might have just been the first time they've done it, and they've been hinting, they've been looking, oh, you look nice, and that disgusting thing. And it's been a lot, and I've just been noticing. Yeah. So that's your opportunistic.
Opportunistic, yeah. They might... And generally, and I'm generalising, so don't quote me on it, but, I find that the opportunistic sex offender might not be attracted to little kids. Yeah. They're more attracted to your prepubescent, pubescent child, where that all of a sudden they're starting to develop, and that's when they obviously notice that they're a female.
Yes.
But then our pedophilic offenders, they have different age groups that they're actually attracted to. Some will be attracted to little children. Some will be attracted to that tween or prepubescent child. Very rarely they'll be attracted to that teenage child because they fall into that other group. But
so as you say, there's subgroups.
Yeah.
Subgroups,
yep.
so to
and
speak.
Most people don't. I mean, look, this isn't a conversation for every day, but no. I do talk about it, and I do share it because, what I see from parents and mums is, and especially mums who are, worried about their teens or worried about their partners, that's what comes up.
Yeah. Yeah, it's a really valid conversation to be having, as you say. Not your normal everyday, but gee, is that where we're missing the point with all this?
Yeah, we are.
We should be having the conversation more.
Yeah, because how scared would predators be if we did? Yeah. If we were literally calling them out.
Yeah.
Because how they have gotten away with thousands of years of abuse of young people, women, whatever, and boys, how they have gotten away with it is because it's been hidden. We didn't talk about it. No. Don't go near Uncle Joe. You know, he's a bit creepy. Yeah. Don't sit on Granddad's lap, or don't sit on this lap. Or now we're seeing, and unfortunately we're seeing a cross section of female offenders now, but that's again another whole nother topic.
Wow. Okay. But getting back to what you're saying, it's about taking the power away from them.
Taking the power away, yeah. And talking about it. And obviously I wrote a book with all of the stuff that I knew, with hints, with basically advice and how to talk about it with your kids, and how to give them, empower them like that, what to do if, what would you do if conversations, and
Yeah, fantastic. Okay, so the book's out. Hopefully a lot of parents are out there purchasing that baby and getting some really good tips.
Operation KidSafe.
Yeah, it's Operation KidSafe, a detective's guide to child abuse prevention, and it's now on Audible and Spotify as well.
Who reads it on Audible?
Me. Yeah. Oh. I did it, yeah.
That's a big job.
It was a big job. It was 3 days.
Oh, wow.
And by the end of it, so the start of it, I'm all this calm, and, you know, you can hear the flow of my voice, and by the end of it, I feel like my voice was going...
It's a raspy old...
It was getting a bit more, and I was talking faster. Yeah. Wow. But I'm so glad that it's out on those, because one of the things I do know that parents say to me all the time is, I don't have time to read a book. So I created an Audible book or an audio book. You can listen to it. Yeah.
Is there one thing that you wish all parents were aware of? And I know there's so much in this subject to condense it down to. Is there one thing in general terms that you just wish all parents would understand about protecting their children?
That their children are at risk from someone in their own home or in their own family, and that they need, or someone known to them. You know, it could be, unfortunately, a sibling, it could be a cousin, it could be an uncle or auntie, or it could be anyone in their family or in their close network. So don't think it won't happen to your child, because it can happen to your child. 1 in 3, 1 in 6, 1 in 3 girls, 1 in 6 boys. So we need to make sure that we are doing the work to ensure it doesn't happen. It's our job. It's our job to protect our kids.
Yeah, it is our job, isn't it? Yeah, we've got to step up to the mark with it all, don't we?
Yep.
Well, thank you, Kristi. We love a quote on the wisdom of women. So what is a quote that you like to...
I quote all the time, if parents knew what I knew, they would do everything differently, or they'd do things differently. So that's all that ran through my mind for months and months after I left the police. If parents knew what I knew, they would do things differently.
And we kind of can know what you know, because you've written this Operation KidSafe.
So we can all get access to
and I'm all over socials sharing it as well.
Okay.
Yeah.
I love it.
Because it's frightening to think there's stuff you know we don't know.
Yeah. I don't want people to know some of the stuff I know, because I don't want, you know, it's... Most people can't handle what actually happens to young people and children, but... that's why I'm not going to share it.
It takes a special person.
Yeah.
And Kristi, what about from your own personal background, your own journey? I love the way you talk about you're a dash-hound mum.
Yes, a new dash-hound mum, by the way.
Oh, congratulations.
Yeah, he's my new baby, Duke. I know my daughter's getting old enough, and she keeps telling me she's moving out when she's 18, and she wouldn't, you know, I don't know about your son, but my daughter has likes to guilt me into believing that I have to do things with her now, otherwise time's running out. She's never coming back.
This is so good. Yeah.
So she's like, I'll be out of your hair in 3 years, so, you know, you need to spend time with me, or you need to do this and you need to do that. I'm like, come on, hurry up now.
She's got it worked out.
She has, yeah. She's got me wrapped around her finger. But
so
yes.
as a woman and your experiences, and we've spoken earlier about what you think women should really hear and understand as well.
Yeah, I just think from my experience, I mean, we talked about my imposter syndrome, that you're good enough exactly as you are, and that's something that it takes going through everything that I've been through to realise, but you're good enough without the weight loss, without the accolades, without the husband or the partner. You know, you're good enough exactly the way you are, and to just you know, and just understand that and just believe that, because you don't need all of that to be who you are.
No, you don't. Very true words. I love it. Thank you, Kristi.
Thank you. Sorry, I'm losing my voice for some reason.
Oh, that's all right. Yeah.
Thank you so much for coming on. Now, if you have been affected by any of the topics discussed in this conversation, please visit the support links below, as well as the links that we will provide for more show information.
And always remember,
every day
you are remarkable.